been 10 days since I did this story. But today we are ready to go with this story of Marshall and Chase on the Case by BlazingPAW. And if you're ready, then sit back and relax and enjoy the story. And don't forget, like and subscribe to see more live streams like this one. But for now on, enjoy the story. Wasn't 1 minute. Seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Let's do this! Woohoo!
Seven, pup napped. What days ago, asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. 2 days ago. Skye was lifting a little girl out of the crevice. There you go. You're gonna be okay. She then contacted Marshall. Marshall? It's Skye. I've got a little girl ready to be looked at. I'm on it. After handing the little girl off to Marshall, she began to look around for somewhere to land. The cockapoo shivered lightly as the storm began to pick up. Brr. Sometimes I wish I had Everest's big coat of fur. Every time she would find herself doing a rescue on Jake's mountain, she couldn't help but imagine what it would be like to play in the snow without having to worry about getting cold or becoming sick afterwards. But she didn't think she could make it as an Arctic pup. After all, her home was at the lookout, and she wouldn't change that for the world. She turned the helicopter, planning to head in the direction of Jake's cabin. It began to storm a bit harder, causing her to temporarily lose control of the aircraft. She tried as best as she could to regain control, but it seemed as though the winds were too rough. Time for an emergency landing. Skye steered toward the snowy ground, despite barely being able to see it. Landing on the snow, the cockapoo took a moment to look around. Hey, Ev. It's Skye, could you come and get me? I had to land because of the storm. Being the only two girls on the team stationed in Adventure Bay, Skye and Everest became fast friends after she joined the PAW patrol. Over time, they got close enough to start calling each other nicknames and visiting each other's places of residence for some one-on-one time between them. On occasion, the girls would head down to Katie's and do what they always loved, gossip. There was nothing like a warm bath and interesting topics to discuss. Skye knew that Everest especially liked these days. But it proved to be the husky pup's undoing, though, as this served as a way for her to figure out Everest's small interest for another pup on the team. Off the trail, Everest won't fail. She heard over her tag, but what about your helicopter? As much as it hurts to leave it behind, we can come back for it once the storm is over. Gotcha, I'm on my way. Thanks, Everest. Skye disconnected the call. Now to wait. After a few minutes, the cockapoo had gotten understandably bored, not to mention more cold than before. Skye snuggled into her outfit, which wasn't suited for long stays in the frigid climate, in an attempt to preserve as much body heat as she could. What wouldn't she do for the warmth of more fur, especially Chase's? Mulling that statement in her head a few more times caused the cockapoo's cheeks to rise in warmth. She couldn't help but to think of his fur when thinking about warmth. That brown and tan neatly groomed fur that seemed to always have the smell of something nice. It wasn't akin to anything she had ever smelled, a special smell just for Chase. 1. And she wouldn't even dare to think about his eyes. Skye soon snapped out of her small trance, realizing that she had been quite literally drooling over her crush for the past 5 minutes. She took a look around, wondering when Everest would show up. 1. Little did she know, someone was coming, but it wasn't Everest. Busby, seize her. Skye felt the strange sensation of being hit on her head with something. Squeaky? Bouncing off of her head was a familiar toy frog. The toy landed in her lap, leaving the cockapoo confused. She was easily able to recognize the toy in her lap as the signature toy that one of the PAW patrol's greatest enemies owned. What is this doing here? She looked down at the green toy before gasping, oh no. Everest. Hell. She somehow was cut short, her ability to speak ripped from her. Maybe she shouldn't have worried as much concerning her ability to speak, when she couldn't even move her whole body. Her entire body was numb, a dull pain centering at the back of her neck. Skye's eyes darted around as she slumped down in her seat. She could see something just barely peeking into the corner of her eyes. Excellent distraction, Busby. A voice congratulated as a familiar white terrier jumped down onto the snow in front of her helicopter. SW. Sweet. Skye tried to say, but found much trouble forming just a single word. Sweetie giggled mischievously, ending with a cute snort, that is my name, don't wear it out. Skye, despite being in the position she was in, rolled her eyes with a faint groan. Now all we need to do is a what's that on your chin. Sweetie cut herself off, curiosity getting the better of her concerning the suspicious liquid dampening the fur beneath her mouth. The cockapoo blushed. She had completely forgotten to wipe the drool that had been the result of one of her chase daydreams. Before she could try an answer, Sky heard the sound of an engine. Sky? Sky? Where are you? She could hear Everest's voice steadily approaching them. No, no, no. Sweetie growled, not this again. I won't allow my plans to be foiled this time. The terrier grabbed Busby and hopped in her vehicle, seemingly flying away. Sky sighed with relief, thinking that Sweetie had left. Sky. There you are. Everest approached her, hopping off of her own vehicle. Are you okay? Swee. Can't. What? Everest walked closer before seeing something suspicious on her friend's neck. That doesn't look good. I've only seen this type of stuff in the movies. What? Sky tried to ask. Firmly stuck in the back of her neck was some sort of dart. Everest concluded that it had some sort of paralyzing effect on the small pup's body, rendering her immobile and barely able to form words. The husky pulled Sky out of her vehicle and onto the snowy surface, ready to drag her back to her snowplow and bring her to Marshall for a quick checkup. Who did this to you? Everest asked, carefully pulling the dart out of her neck. Sky's eyes suddenly darted to the left. Everest confusedly followed her gaze, only to see a familiar white terrier approaching in her vehicle, not stopping when she began to get too close. Ev. Sky tried to scream at her, only resulting in a grunt coming out. No matter how hard she tried, the quadriplegic effect Sweetie's dart had on the cockapoo's body was extremely potent by this point, it becoming a bit tougher to even breathe for a moment or two. She couldn't shout, couldn't run, couldn't help her friend at all. She felt useless in this situation. She felt scared. Before the husky pup could even register what was happening, she was suddenly sent flying away from Sky. A piercing yelp filled the air as Everest slammed into the snow a few feet away. Sky tried to scream out. For Ryder, Marshall, Jake, anybody, yet she was only able to whimper as she became an unwilling spectator to the scene unfolding before her eyes. She could hear Everest breathe shakily, standing up to face Sweetie. Sweetie. Everest strained, stumbling to keep balanced. The husky never understood what being knocked silly really meant. She had watched Marshall take some pretty bad spills and trips, his eyes comically swirling afterwards, but she didn't realize how disorienting it is to be hit in such a way. She shook her head. The hit she had taken was substantial to the point of temporarily losing her ability to think straight. You pups really like saying my name. Sweetie grinned. It's not a bad thing, though. I know you all just adore me. Did you do that too? To Sky? Everest asked, struggling to remain conscious. Sweetie wasn't worried in the slightest. The husky pup in front of her was stumbling under her own weight and gradually slurring her words more and more as she spoke. Sky was able to recognize this as well, and was worried for Everest. Nobody could take a hit like that and leave with only a bruise and a damaged ego. She wasn't an EMT like Marshall, but even she knew that whatever was going on with Everest wasn't good in the slightest. Ev. Sky managed to push out. Since the husky pulled the dart out of the back of her neck, the effect of her imposed paralysis had been lessening with every moment that passed. Everest turned her head. She saw the look in her friend's eyes. They were filled with a color of fear, splashed with concern. Sky tried her best to move, to make some kind of signal, some kind of indication as to what she wanted Everest to do. She nodded. Just a simple nod was enough for Everest to stop and nod back. The husky stumbled and turned around, running back to her snowplow and racing off. Be safe, Ev. Skye sighed with relief. Everest jumped off of her snowplow, seeing Marshall and Ryder talking with what she assumed to be the little girl Skye had rescued earlier. She wobbled towards them, nearly tripping a few times on her way there. "Help!" she cried. "Was that Everest?" she could hear Marshall ask. Soon, the Dalmatian was standing in front of her, a concern filling his face. She could see his eyes drift up to her head, which probably wasn't looking any good. She could feel her strength begin to ebb, her head feeling light and her eyes growing tired. She didn't have much time left, and she was aware of it. Skye. She. The husky's eyelids soon grew heavy, her legs buckling and giving out under her. She heard muffled shouts, followed by more soon afterwards. Things went black as she finally allowed herself to drift off. Where am I? Skye slowly opened her eyes. The cockapoo tried to stretch, but stopped when her legs began hitting the sides of the space she was confined in. Skye sat there in confusion for a short while before letting out an exasperated sigh, her eyelids lowering. Right. She was pup-napped. Currently, she was laying in a white-colored dog carrier, facing away from the cage door. She carefully maneuvered herself around and looked outside of the carrier. "Where are we going now, sweetie?" Skye asked, catching her captor's attention. "You're awake?" Sweetie asked. "We'll be heading to Barkingburg for a quick stop, then off to your final destination." Despite most of her plans not being as thoroughly planned out, Sweetie was taking this plan as seriously as she could, as one mistake could ruin the whole scheme and she wouldn't be able to do it again. After consulting with Busby, they were able to find ways to get around some of the obstacles in her way to get to the crown. She required 3 phases for this new plan. Phase 1, hit M where it hurts. Sweetie planned to take one of the members of the PAW patrol. The last time one of their own went missing during a mission PAW, they spent most of the time searching for him. Taking another member, preferably not Chase because he's dealt with it before, would be good to give her some time during Phase 3. Phase 2, drop off. The terrier had the idea of dropping the stolen pup, in this case, Skye, off somewhere where she wouldn't escape. But what was like a jail for pups? What wouldn't she be able to escape from? The carrier wasn't good enough to keep her forever. She knew she had to move quickly, as the longer a single carrier confined the aviation pup, the greater chance that an escape could take place. Sweetie hadn't brought much of her equipment from Barkingburg, so she knew if Skye escaped, she was basically working with an empty blow-dart chamber, Busby, her vehicle, and her paws. But she wasn't going to waste them on something as nasty and degrading as. "Then you'll let me go, right?" The cockapoo brazenly inquired, in a feigned sweet tone. On second thought, maybe she'd consider it. "Will you stop asking me that?" The terrier snapped. "You know I'm not going to let you go. Why must you be so irritating?" Skye smiled. "You think I'm irritating?" "Yes." "Then I'm doing a good job." Sweetie huffed, "Dumb mutt." Soon after she was taken from Jake's mountain, Skye had developed a simple, yet effective strategy. All she had to do was disturb Sweetie at every moment she got. If she was going to be taken from her home, her family, and her crush, then she was certainly not going to allow Sweetie to have a good time. The cockapoo looked out of the cage and around at the sights that flew by. It was getting close to sunset. There was no doubt that the rest of the team knew she was gone. But how were they going to find out what happened to her? Hopefully Everest was able to explain properly, as Sweetie took her pup tag, along with her collar, and threw them both into the snow around her helicopter. She hadn't been without her collar in quite some time. Sure, she had lost her pup tag before, but she felt naked without her collar. Well, she was naked regardless. Sweetie had taken off her rescue attire at Skase's request because there was too much snow in it. Without her rescue attire, pup tag, or even her collar, she really was just a normal pup. She hadn't been just a normal pup for years, not since she was found by the PAW patrol. The cockapoo sighed heavily. They were probably worried sick for her. She especially felt bad about losing her way in a snowstorm. Again. Just like Chase had warned her about. She considered herself to be a pup of her word, yet was unable to follow through on what she told Chase before leaving. Be careful out there. You know what happened last time you were piloting in such weather. I'll be okay, Chase. I'll be back before you can say Chase is on the case. By this point, Chase could have declared his usual catchphrase hundreds of times over. She rested her head on the small, metallic bars that lined the cage door. What wouldn't she give for another pup-pup boogie match with Zuma? Her heart ached for a chance to watch Apollo with Rubble some more. What wouldn't she do for a game of tag with Rocky? She pined to be crashed into by Marshall once again. The cockapoo angled for a trip to Katie's with Everest. She missed the feeling of being pet and cuddled by Ryder. Not to mention, she'd give anything in the world to hug Chase one more time. Just once more. She wouldn't ask for anything else. She missed the pups, she missed her owner, she missed her family. She wanted to scream, she wanted to kick down the cage's door and run back to the lookout, she wanted to cry. There was nothing she wanted more than to just wake up and realize that this all had been a bad dream. She kept closing her eyes, firmly believing that she'd just be in the lookout again and everything would be okay. But she was still there. She was wide awake. She was still in Sweetie's custody. The aviation pup rubbed her eyes. She had to remain strong. She was a proud member of the PAW patrol. She was Sky, for dog's sake. The pup that could fly. The first female pup to be on the team. Protector of Adventure Bay, Mighty Pup, and so much more. Stay strong, Sky. She thought, looking back out into the viewable distance, they'll come for you. She let herself relax as the seconds ticked by. Seconds turned into minutes, and minutes to hours. How much gas did Sweetie have in her vehicle? How far were they from Barkingburg? The cockapoo was beginning to feel a bit stiff from the time spent confined to the cage. Sweetie, on the other paw, wasn't thinking anything about the long fly to Barkingburg from Jake's Mountain. She didn't like the cold, so she was just glad to get her tail out of there. But visiting the mountain did leave her with a bit of interest. She would love to have a mountain named after herself. Sweetie's Mountain. She spoke the hypothetical name aloud, Not as good of a ring to it. Sweetie Heights? Wasn't that already used for another one of the PAW patrol's enemies? Mount Sweetie? Better. Or Mount Sweet. Sweetie corrected, her eyes lighting up. That would be the perfect name. Don't you think so, Busby? It's a toy. Sky shouted from the dog carrier. Don't you dare talk about my minion in such a manner. Sweetie was quick to reprimand the cockapoo. Only I have that right. The aviation pup retorted, not like he'll hear me. Sweetie's eye twitched faintly. Hush up, pup. I'll expose you to the princess just like how Chase did. I'd like to see you try while in that carrier. I'll get out of here. Sky banged her paw on the cage door. Chase and the others wouldn't give up, so neither will I. But the PAW patrol isn't here, are they? They're right here, in my 2. Sweetie groaned, don't even say it. In my heart. 3. The terrier groaned louder. Sky smirked, knowing that Sweetie wasn't looking at her. She was doing well when it came to bothering Sweetie. There really wasn't anything else to do, after all. It was at least passing the time. Sweetie, on the other paw, was getting close to the point of knocking Sky down into the ocean below them. She knew exactly what the aviation pup was trying to do. Sure, she tried to float the throne away and make a whole new kingdom, but she wasn't stupid. Okay, maybe that plan wasn't her best. Regardless, she was smart enough to know that Sky was trying to get into her head, and there was no way she was going to allow that to happen. Deciding to remain quiet, Sweetie continued on their path to Barkingburg, as she needed to settle a few more things there. Present. So what did you want to talk about, Chase? Sky asked, tilting her head softly. Chase, who was sitting under a tree near the lookout, looked over at Sky and smiled. Oh, you're here. Of course I'm here, you asked me to come. Sky sat next to him, and I just can't say no to you. Chase chuckled. I wouldn't have wanted the girl I like to have not come. Yeah. The cockapoo giggled before letting out a squeak. Wait, what? I think you heard me right. The shepherd looked at her with a smile warmer than the sun. I like you. Like, as in like? Her tail began to wag. Chase nodded. I really like you, Sky. I like you too. Sky suddenly tackled the bigger dog, resulting in them tumbling on the ground for a few feet. The two pups stopped, Sky laying on top of her crush. Chase chuckled, retaining the confident demeanor that she had grown to adore. I guess you really do feel the same. Of course. Sky nuzzled into his chest. I'm so glad. Chase then used one of his paws to lift her chin so that they were eye to eye. The shepherd began leaning in. Sky knew exactly what this meant. The moment she's been waiting for even since she realized she had feelings for him. 7. A kiss. Sky closed her eyes, her tail wagging excitedly. Just mere centimeters apart, she opened her eyes to look at Chase just once more. But all she saw were the metal bars of the carrier she had been placed in. The aviation pup teared up. It had all been a dream she so desperately wanted to live. Despite having feelings for Chase for some time, she hadn't ever dreamed about him. Maybe she was feeling a lot more homesick now that it had been 2 days since she was taken from her home. Her stomach growled. It had also been 2 days since the last time she had eaten, which was lunch at the lookout before their mission. Had she known that she wouldn't be coming back in a while, she would have pulled a rubble and stashed some treats somewhere. It's not like she had much fur on her body to stash treats, though. Sky weakly clinged to one of the bars on the carrier. The extreme hunger she had been ignoring was finally catching up with her. This time, there was nowhere to run. The cockapoo laid her head down. She couldn't help but to think of food. It had been years since she had nothing to eat. Ryder took such good care of her and the others. She probably missed Ryder the most. She was her owner, after all. 4. Like she had done many times over the last 2 days, she wiped developing tears from her eyes. She had to be strong. The pups, for Chase, for Ryder. She wasn't going to give up, no matter what. Continue to next part.
Okay, guys, you know what? I have an idea. I am planning something a little bit more different. Like, hear me out. I will do like this. New stuff. I will be trying to post every day one part of this story. Just one part. To not just do 2 parts in the stream, in this story. In this way, I'm ending now the stream. So yes, maybe tomorrow I will continue with the part chapter 8, and then another day with chapter 9, like this, and until we get to the end of the story. But until then, guys, have a nice day or night, and I see you next time again for more for tomorrow live stream again to hear chapter 8. Until then, guys, have a nice night or a nice day, and then until then, guys, see you next time.